Hey guys, it's Andrew or Feel No Pain. Today I'm bringing you another review of Dragon Age Inquisition. This is actually the third in the series, but I heard it was good. I haven't played the first two, but I figured I'd jump right into this one because it was the newest, and I'd been looking for kind of like a long-term game to play in my free time. I've been playing... I'm kind of burned out on Diablo. I've been playing a lot of just random little like free-to-play stuff and things that kept my attention for a few hours or only had a few hours worth of gameplay. I wanted a big sort of open world game to play, so I went with this one. And I thought after playing for about 8 or 10 hours, I'd give you guys a review. I've got a pretty good feel for it, and I do know some things that are coming up I haven't experienced yet. I've done my research, so even though I haven't experienced them, I can kind of let you guys know where this ends up going. First off, it is available on PC, Xbox One, Xbox 360, PS4, and PS3. The standard edition's $59.99 standard for games, and the deluxe is $69.99, which includes like I think a bonus mount and some other things. Just it's not a huge difference, but I mean, if $10 isn't a big deal, you might as well. You're going to get a lot of playtime out of this game for sure. So that, and I'm going to go ahead and put the PC specs on the screen. They're pretty high. They're up there with games like Witcher 3, which I'm going to be doing a review of soon. And my computer, like I've said in previous ones, isn't the greatest, but it's I bought it specifically to play games, and this one runs at between 45 and 60 frames per second on pretty much high, medium to high. Most of my things are on high. I believe the like tessellation or whatever it's called is on low, because that's a huge, just it gives me huge frame drops to put it any higher. But as you can see, the game looks pretty nice, even though I recorded with Shadowplay to get a better frame rate, which always kind of lowers the fidelity a little, and YouTube in itself. But it's still a very pretty game. It's easily looks better overall than something like, say, Skyrim that's a few years old and has great lighting effects, and it has like really cool atmosphere and really cool surroundings, and just the way everything looks is really solid, even on medium. So I can't really complain too much about that. This game is made by EA and BioWare. EA obviously notorious for having terrible online. I haven't tried the online multiplayer in this, but I'm not going to make any judgments. I haven't heard anything specifically terrible in my research, but I'm always a little wary. I mean, the Battlefield games always came out with a just slew of problems, and there's a variety of others that have had huge issues at launch and many months in. So if that's something that bothers you or scares you, the good news is, even though it is an online game, you do log into Origin when you start playing. I lost my connection today, actually, while I was playing, and for this review, but it doesn't kick you off. It just removes the multiplayer components. So if you're playing a single player game, it's not a problem. And I'm actually very thankful for that. These always online games are a pain, especially if the servers are kind of wonky. And so that's not really an issue. And BioWare might sound familiar. It should, if you've played games in the last handful of years, because they're the ones that made Mass Effect. And while this does have a lot of similarities to things like Skyrim and stuff like that, whereas you can see I'm going around just picking plants and gathering components and resources, it's got the sort of conversation feel of Mass Effect, which I'll get into later. Believe it or not, I actually put that under one of my negative sort of viewpoints of this game. But it's a cool combination, the fact that they did that. This is far more closer to an open world than, say, Mass Effect. It's not quite like Skyrim because you do have zones. It's more like something like World of Warcraft or an MMO. You have very, very big zones with a lot to do in them, but you do have separate zones. That said, I'm going to go ahead and get into sort of the pros and cons right after I say this is Origin only. You cannot get this on Steam. You have to go to the Origin website, download it, use their loader, which is not as good as Steam usually. It's never felt as stable. It's never felt quite as good to me, but to be honest, really all you're using it for this, since the single player is kind of the meat and potatoes of this game, you're really only using it for just a backdrop to load the game. And apparently I can't ride a horse, as you guys can see right here. But, so I haven't had any issues with that. Anyway, the pros of this game, and as much as I'm loving this game and kind of almost didn't want to stop playing it to make a video, the pros and cons actually ended up being kind of equal length lists, which surprised me, but it's the severity. The pros are huge positives for this game, and the cons are minor negatives that you can look past. Or at least that I could. I managed to fix a couple issues that were kind of plaguing me with relative ease. I've heard that some people weren't able to fix them, so it is kind of one of those at your own risks thing. I haven't had major game-breaking problems, but I heard there's a couple out there. The pros starts with the obvious. Huge open-world game, Skyrim-esque, I guess, or like if World of Warcraft was a single-player game. That level of scale is in this game, and it's fantastic. You never feel like anything's reused. You never feel like you're visiting the same place twice, even though it's not the same place. You do a lot of running back and forth, but there's a great fast travel system. Basically, from the map at any time, you can fast travel to any like encampment or like major location, I believe, friendly location, I think, that you've been before, which after you open some stuff up becomes a huge boon, a huge help, because the maps are so gigantic it would take 10-15 minutes to run across them. Now, sometimes the way this game works, and it's very much like Skyrim in this effect, or any of the Elder Scrolls games, I guess Skyrim's the newest, so I just keep saying that one. There have been times where I've just been in a mood to run across an entire map and find things along the way, and you almost can't make it from one side to a map of a map to the other without finding something new. Some house, someone or someone that needs help, some little like cave or mountain path or bandit camp or anything like that. So it's cool. It gives you the option. If you're really focused on like certain quests, you can get to them quicker. If you want to just explore and open up new things, you can do that too. The second thing kind of ties in, and this is one where I give it a huge plus over games like the Elder Scrolls, is the tight combat system. It's kind of a target locking system. I'm not going to say it's tab targeting because I believe tab targeting is available, but it's basically you right click on the monster or whatever you're fighting, and that becomes your selected target, and then to auto attack you either hold R or left click on them, and hold left click, and then you can use your abilities, 1 through 8 I think it is down there on the toolbar, and you use those and use them in conjunction with your auto attacks. And then of course there's a mage, a rogue, and a warrior. I think that's it. But they have different types. Like rogue, you can be like a dagger rogue, or you can be a bow rogue. Mages have basically the different elements. There's fire, ice, and lightning, and then sort of like a healing, buffing variation. And then warriors, you can be like a two-handed like damage dealer, or you can be a sword and board tank. And there's skill lines for those. So the first 3 characters that you meet are the 3 that I have. You do unlock many, many more later, and I apologize for having to take a drink in the middle of my my review, but allergy season, plus I'm still getting over the sickness I've had, so I'm trying not to cough everywhere. But all those things combined are make for a lot of diverse builds in your group. Well, that didn't work. But the first 3 you get are a rogue who uses a bow, and then Cassandra, who is a warrior, she's the tank, and then Solus, who is the mage, and Varric is the name of the rogue. Solus is the mage, and you get to put their skill points wherever you want when they level up, but all the characters have sort of like standard AI. They'll use their skills in a way that kind of fits what skills you've given them. Like the tank will try to tank and will try to get bad guys off the mage or the rogue by taunting and doing stuns and things like that. And the rogue and the mage will hold back. They won't try to rush in or anything stupid. So the AI is pretty good. You can actually flip-flop between all 4 characters at any given time. F1 through F4 changes who you're playing as. So if there's something specific you want to do, like at a certain time, you can switch to a character and use a certain ability or switch targets or anything like that. But there is even a system with the characters where you give them like AI, sort of some basic AI commands that they'll always do, like when to use a potion, like what health level, how many potions, like if you have less than 2 potions, they'll stop using them, so that you can, or you can do less than 3, less than 4, less than 5, so that if you get low, you can focus on giving your tank the potions. You can just F3 in this case, because she's the 3rd one on the list, and then F3, hit 9, give her a potion, hit F1 to go back to the character that you created, and you get to sort of determine how you play. There's even a stop time button. It's a tactical mode. There's a tactical mode where you can sort of like give everyone commands and have them use certain abilities, or you can just hit control to stop time. And I mean, there's a button on consoles too, but for the keyboard, it's control. It stops time. It lets you think about what you're gonna do. And I imagine for like bigger boss fights or on harder difficulties, that would be super like necessary. But I was playing on normal. I really want to experience the game before maybe going back and trying it on something harder. But that's the combat's really good. It takes a little while to get used to like left click something to keep auto attacking, but I actually got used to kind of holding the R button and then using my abilities as needed. And you can just right click to switch targets. It goes pretty well, and the learning curve's fine, because even though it took me a couple hours to get used to that, the monsters at the beginning are not incredibly difficult or anything. Your tank can hold her own. Cassandra's a beast, and she can. Those little like marks on her life are actually kind of like, they're called guard, I believe. It's basically like additional armor that her abilities give her. That and Solus has shields, so between those two, unless she just completely loses aggro, she pretty much never dies. Or you're fighting something you really shouldn't be. The third pro, and this is a weird one, is your freedom to die. You are given complete freedom to screw yourself. There's actually a part in this first zone, the Hinterlands. If you've heard anything about this game, that name probably sounds familiar. Only because this zone has like hundreds of quests, dozens of hours of content, and a lot of people that I've seen reviews on and Let's Plays and stuff, you know, half-hour Let's Plays, they'll be 40 episodes in still doing Hinterland stuff. And, you know, complaining-ish, you know, complaining, not complaining, like, oh god, I just want to move on to the next place, but, you know, enjoying what they're doing at the same time. So this is not the kind of game where you're going to sit down for 4 hours and see, like, 6 different areas if you're, like, a completionist, or if you really want to see the world. But the freedom to die, yeah, you can walk into a dragon's lair and just get slaughtered. You can, at level 2, you can walk into a place that has a level 12, group of bad guys, or a level 8 bear. Bears are nasty, as you can see. My team did alright taking them out. We're like level 6, 5, and 6. But, you add that with a couple other monsters and things get kind of crazy. 4-on-1 combat is pretty unfair, but when you get groups of things, you really have to sort of like have crowd control in mind, and you have to have your tank. A couple times I've actually, in large group situations, switched to Cassandra to control her so that she can keep aggro off things. I'm used to doing it from stuff like World of Warcraft, so that kind of thing didn't bother me. But she does pretty well on her own. Even in large group situations, usually the worst that's going to happen is maybe an archer or two will start pinging you or the mage, and you'll have to refocus your attacks. But even as someone who's not the tank, you can click on whoever's attacking you, hit Y, and your whole team will focus on them. So if you need to burn something down real quick, you can do that. Some other things that are pros, those are the big ones, the ones that really make the game worth playing for hours and hours and hours. Some sort of smaller ones are, you can save anytime. It's like Skyrim. You open up the menu, you hit save, you pick a slot, you save your game. So if you know you're going into a dungeon or something, or it's a really tough area, you can save after every fight. And some people would say that that's kind of game breaking and unfair, but the truth is, it's actually it's a good thing. I like it because nothing frustrates me more in a game like this than getting set back like half an hour from where I was. Especially because it's a long game anyway. The last thing you want is to be replaying quests when you're already going to be doing hundreds of them. Which brings me to the next thing, insane questing. It really does have an insane amount of quests. I believe at some point in this video, I have no idea when, but if you're watching, keep an eye out for it. I actually opened my quest journal. Mind you, I've played 8 hours. I've completed a lot of quests. And in the hinterlands, I think I have like 20 or 25 quests still. And that's just quests. Some of those are quest chains. Some of those lead to other things. Some of those will take you to areas that have more. It's absolutely ridiculous. But for a game like this, to keep you interested for dozens, hundreds of hours, it really needs that kind of system. The other one is a rich crafting system, where at the end of this video, I'm probably going to show just kind of how that works. But it's you find plans, schematics, whatever you want to call them, and then you can craft those items out of things you found. But you'll find like a schematic for a longbow, something basic, but then you have to craft it out of like wood and metal, or yeah, I believe it's wood and metal. Anyway, you can choose what kind of wood, what kind of metal. It changes the attributes on it, it changes the damage on it, it changes what you get on it. I think it even changes what you can attach to it. And then you can go over to another, or then you can create add-ons. Like one-handed swords I know better than any, just because I think they have a grip, like a hilt, and like something like an actual like modifier for the sword blade or something. And like higher rarity ones have more slots, but you can put things in there that increase the damage and the stats and everything on it. So that kind of thing is, it's a very rich crafting system. You have to find the plans, but once you do, you can combine, and you can even remove if you find a really, really like rare weapon with a bunch of like really good attachments, but the weapon itself is like 6 levels too low for you. You can actually remove those attachments and put them on something else, whether it be a new grip or a new, I think even, yeah, staves have a grip, or like a new stone at the top, or whatever it's called. But I'll stop right here and see these things right here, the astrariums. I'm gonna mess up a lot of the stuff in this game because there's so many sort of like fantasy world words. I don't even try to pronounce most of them. These are basically things that let you see constellations, and you have to connect the dots without redoing lines. It's a cool little puzzle that they put in the middle. And as you saw just there, it popped up and it said, find the cave. Well, once you find all 3 astrariums in one zone, it points a light towards the cave, which is like a little dungeon that you do for... It's like your reward, and you get a bunch of good stuff in there. So this game has hundreds of hours, which, if you're playing a game for hundreds of hours, you need good voice acting. You need not to feel like you're being talked to by a bunch of actors or a bunch of amateurs. You need to feel like you're actually witnessing conversations with a lot of people. And this is the quest thing I was telling you about. These are all quests in the hinterlands I'm looking at. But yeah, you need to have good voice acting if you're going to have voice acting. And this game does in spades. Every time you talk to someone, it's all voice acted. And like I said, this is a trait of BioWare that I'm used to from playing the Mass Effect games. They do massive amounts of voice acting, and they do it really well. And it's done equally well in this. You even get to choose your own character's voice at the beginning. And the NPCs are realistic enough. Some of them are, a little over the top, but, there's crazy people in the real world, so why wouldn't there be some, sort of off-the-wall characters? This guy, for instance, he's a hunter. He asked me to go get him food, and he's thankful. But it's very sincere, it's not overplayed, it's just very oh, you've really done a good thing here. Thanks. It's not oh, savior of the world. There's no overacting or anything, and the people who do overact are meant to overact. There's now I can't really know. Basically, the clerics, the religious group in this game, they're very sort of praise the maker, praise, they're very sort of over the top, but it's one of those things that this game sort of deals with a lot of issues, real-life issues, and I guess that's the last pro I've got. It deals with them fantastically. Things like religion versus science, and because it's basically the religious people versus the mages. And you could consider the mages the science folks, because they are the ones that manipulate, the world as it is. And there's a lot of commentary there about why they hate each other, why they're afraid of each other, what they think about each other. And a lot of it applies to real life and some of the problems that go on in the actual world. And it also, this game deals with racism, it deals with all sorts of things flawlessly, because they tell you right at the beginning that the elves are sort of an unliked race. And that the dwarves have basically gone into, for the most part, solitude in, I want to say Orgrimmar, and I know that's Orgrimmar, and I know that's World of Warcraft. It's close to that, Orthamar or Orgrimmar, something like that. Anyway, their city, they've kind of gone into hiding, and they give you reasons behind all this, and people may have pushed them there. People may have told them they're not allowed being in society for, elves. And you get a lot of those dynamics, and it makes the game better. It feels like a living, breathing world. Obviously, we know everything's scripted, because it's all, it's programmed. It's not like you're creating code as you go. But the amount of choices and the amount of things that, branching paths or branching conversation options, really just make the world feel alive. Makes it feel like you are leading the story and not just choosing, A or B. So I'll get into the cons. I talked about the pros for a good long time, and I think I'm actually running out of video. So, the cons, there are AI glitches. I ran into a thing where inexplicably all 3 of my guys got stuck on a rock, and I started combat with a group of people, and whatever I did, I could not get my guys to attack them. I had to actually it was like mages or archers that I was fighting, so they wouldn't follow me because the distance you can fight is insane. You can cast spells hundreds of feet away. So I had to hide behind some rocks, let them like come by and like sort of lead them to my group just once. This only happened once. So there's some pathing issues and a little bit of combat issues. I even hit Y and my group couldn't figure out how to get past this one rock and attack. There's a little bit of that, and of course you could control them manually to move them, but at the time I was getting attacked. I didn't want to die. So once in 8 hours that happened. That's a con, but I can live with that if it happens that infrequently. And I'm almost guarantee if I'd like loaded a save game and done it again, it wouldn't have happened. I think it was just the lines of code that dictate that somehow had a discrepancy and happened. This is a weird con because I already talked about how much I like it. This does have typical BioWare conversation options. Typical, like, Mass Effect style. Sometimes you are stuck with being the good guy, the bad guy, or sort of indifferent. Everyone will take that differently. Everyone will actually respond differently. There are certain people who prefer a sympathetic outlook on things, and there's some people who will prefer you to be kind of like hard and heavy-handed and, you know, just tell it like it is, and other people that like love a good lie, and other people that, you know, there's all different personalities. So depending on who you're talking to or even with in your party, they will disapprove or approve based on what you do. And it's impossible to make everyone happy all the time. When you're in those group situations, whatever you do is going to piss someone off. And because you are the Herald of Andraste, or the Inquisitor later on, you're the one everyone looks to for advice. So when you're in a group and two people are fighting, you basically have to choose. Or let them fight it out themselves, but in that case, you're not really leading like you're supposed to in this game. And then someone else won't like it because they'll be like, oh, we chose this guy as our leader. He's kind of not leading. So you can't win, and that's fine. It makes for a great game. You have to make choices, but it's been done. I really don't feel like they did anything at all with the sort of vocal choices that hasn't been done. So that being said, they're still excellent, but if you've played Mass Effect, you're going to kind of see those, and the romance options are still in there, where you can flirt with people. Guy or girl, how they react to it will actually depend on their sexual orientation and your gender. So that's cool, but it's still there. And it's still one of those things that basically every time one of those comes up, if you mash it, eventually you're going to like get into bed with that person, as long as they're into you, as long as they're into your gender. So it's a little bit thinly veiled, but for the most part, it's still fantastic and is way better than just about anything else out there. I would have liked to just see a departure from the Mass Effect style, a little like, or an upgrade or a little more depth. But I understand you can't do everything. So another con, which is also kind of just, it's sort of like a double-edged sword to one of the pros, is it's easy to lose track of your purpose in this game. Your purpose is obviously whatever you want it to be. You do have a main quest line, but it's easy to get lost and spend 4 hours picking elf fruit and mining iron and just kind of going nuts. So that all having been said, it's sometimes you lose a lot of time, and because I don't have a lot of time, there was actually one day I played for like 2 hours, got almost zero accomplished, like one quest maybe, and was sort of frustrated because I wanted to see what was beyond that, but I just sort of got lost in running around and climbing mountains and seeing where I could go. And while that's a good experience, it wasn't what I wanted that day. I just made the mistake of losing myself in it. Another one of the cons is, oh my god, the hinterlands. Like, it's great, but like I said, people bitch and it goes on forever. So that one's not really a con. It's amazing. There's tons of cool stuff to do, but holy crap. I almost wish they'd split it into 2 zones, like 2 areas, just because you do kind of get that feeling of it being stagnant after a while. I can already go to other places, so probably what I'm going to do is go to other places and come back to it to finish the quests. But if you did them all without going anywhere else, all just straight through, you'd probably go out of your mind. But I already have options like 6-8 hours in to go other places, so it's fine. Long load times, it's like 30-45 seconds the initial load plus when you load your save. But after that, it's very rare that you load going between zones, but it doesn't happen that often, so it is kind of annoying when it happens, especially because at the beginning you have to load up the game and then load up your save, and that's like almost 2 minutes. But after that, it's okay. It's a minor qualm, but I had to find something about this game I didn't like. The last one is probably the most severe. It's the sound problems. I have a 5.1 surround sound system. I have it set to that. I have the game set to that. It wouldn't work. It would play sounds, but when I was in conversations, you couldn't hear the other people. It sounded like they were 100 feet away underwater. So basically what I did was I found out that I had to go into my sound settings in the game and also in my sound settings on my computer and turn it to stereo. I don't know if consoles have these problems. I'm assuming not as much anyway. Maybe it's one of those things where if you have a surround sound, you'll have to switch it to stereo. I'm not sure. But I had to switch it all to stereo and run it in stereo. And then when I'm done playing this and want to play something else, I have to switch it back. So that's kind of a pain. I'm not really sure what causes that. What piece of coding went wrong, but yeah, it's definitely like it's just not reading the surround correctly. But that's pretty much it. As you can tell, there's a lot of really good stuff about this game that is apparent throughout the entire thing and makes it a really good game. And there's a few little problems here and there, but it's no different from Mass Effect. That was kind of a buggy game too. So I mean, if you want an open world game that feels a little bit like a cross between Mass Effect and Skyrim with a really good combat system, and basically you're the chosen one, you're the herald that survived this huge horrible thing, and eventually you become the Inquisitor that everyone, and you basically try to get the entire world to join your cause. If that sounds good, which it does to me, is a 100+ hour game that you can probably spend 6 months playing, pick it up. $60 on Origin. Just search it on Google and you'll find it. It's amazing. So I will see you guys in the next video. Later.